What's up, guys? It's Parallax Abstraction, and this is Retro Flashback, showcasing gaming's roots and for a new generation. So, I got another retro pack for you guys today. I don't know why these videos have always been so popular on my channel, but hey, why not? So this is Atari Vault, which just recently came out on the PC on Steam from, well, Atari. Though not really the Atari that you're thinking of. Atari is a very interesting company. They are one of the original fathers of video games, if you will. And the company still exists today, but it has changed owners a number of times and been through, well, it's been through hell and gone, let me just put it that way. And the current Atari is one that not a lot of people are necessarily a fan of. But they did put this pack out, and I wanted to show it to you guys today. So, this comes to us courtesy of Code Mystics, which is a developer with a very good reputation, actually, for putting older games on modern systems. The most recent title they did before this was the re-release of Super Star Wars for the PlayStation 4, which was actually quite good and an exceptionally well-done version. And I gotta say, they definitely did do a pretty good job here as well. So, as usual, this video is going to talk more about the package and not so much about any individual game within it. To let you know if basically this package is worth your investment, I guess you could say. So this pack is $20, and it boasts 100 games from the classic Atari arcade line and from the Atari 2600, which was their sort of premier home console. Multi-game console anyway. The first thing they did was Pong. So, alright, I am going to quickly go through the list of games here while I talk about this, because there's way too many to list out. So I'm just going to go through. You can show the games either by box art, cabinets, or a list format, which I do appreciate. So I'm going to go through all that. So here's all the arcade stuff. So yeah, this is an interesting package. I was actually hoping we would see an Atari package at some point, because this is a company that obviously has a very, very deep history in video games, and it's an important thing that I think more people should get an exposure to. This package is actually pretty well put together, I'm going to say, but the game selection is just... It's really going to depend what you're into, I guess, but while there is a lot of history in here, unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is not necessarily the best that Atari had to offer. To be frank with you, on the 2600, a lot of the best games didn't come from Atari. They came from third parties like Activision, and you're not going to see any of those games in here. This is only games from Atari themselves, because they are the ones who put out this package. So that could be a bit limiting for some people, but... let's talk about the actual things that come to the table with this package, and I have to say it's pretty good. Again, this package does not come to the level of insanity customization that something like Capcom Arcade Cabinet does, but that also went way above and beyond what was actually necessary. So, alright, so let's talk about this here. So what can you do with each of these games? Well, you can play with mouse and keyboard or a controller. It's funny, I really recommend playing with a controller for the games, but it's also not the ideal way to play a lot of these games, because a lot of them had analog controls done with either paddles or spinners. But the mouse and keyboard is definitely the best way to navigate the menus. The way the buttons are mapped in the menus is just baffling to me, and it's really frustrating. Like, see how I'm just trying to get over to where it says defaults and back? Like, you have to hit... No, what is it? No, that's not it. I can't... See what I mean? It's just kind of a pain. So I actually prefer the keyboard and mouse for the menus. I don't know why they designed the menus this way. I think that was a very poor choice. But the nice thing is, with both the arcade games and the 2600 games, you can tweak pretty much everything. You can tweak difficulties, you can tweak bonus lives, starting lives. The 2600 was famous for a lot of their games had a lot of different game modes that you could alternate via switches on the console itself, and you can tweak all that stuff, which I really like. I'll get into the 2600 stuff after, though. Display, so you can turn bezel art on and off, because obviously these games will not fill a proper widescreen monitor. So you can turn artwork on and off. Some people like that, some people don't. I personally do like it. If you don't, you can turn it off, which is cool. A lot of the arcade games in this are from the Vector era. So Vector graphics was basically a different type of monitor that used that displayed sort of, is mostly line art. You'll see what I mean there. And Vector graphics, they had a very specific look to them. It was a very sort of huey glow. I can't even really describe it. You'd have to see it in person to understand. It doesn't really translate well to a video. But what's neat about this is that they have given you different profiles for this. So you can have standard, which is sort of a representation of the vector graphics that's best suited for a modern monitor, so an LCD monitor, television, things like that. And it's actually quite good. I'll show you that. You can turn the glow completely off if you don't want it. You can have realistic, which has the much more sort of fuzzy hue to it that you might expect, and then you have bold, which just sort of burns your eyes out. I'm going to very quickly show you each of these, and then we'll move on from there. You can also pick your resolution, and interestingly enough, this recognizes my 144 hertz monitor. We're only recording at 60 hertz, obviously. Whether that makes any difference, I don't know, but the fact that it actually supports it is cool. You don't see that very often in these packages, so that's cool. And that you can change the resolution at all is more than I can say about a lot of games that I've played lately, including modern ones. So, alright, you can also tweak the audio for the game. You can tweak the game's sound and music independently, which is very, very cool. You couldn't do that on a lot of these games in their original format, so that they've actually broken that out here is pretty cool. I like that. And you can adjust this sort of neat 80s synth tune thing that they have in the background on the music. I actually like it. I think it's fitting, so you can do that. Also, this is a really interesting thing. All of these games have online leaderboards. Now, not a lot of people right now are really playing this collection, so the leaderboards are not necessarily that deep, but they do exist, and you can play these games and, well, file your scores online. I really like that. There's a lot of packages that don't always do this or don't do it very well. This is basic, for sure, but it works, and I actually really appreciate that. I think that's really cool. Also, these games have full local and online multiplayer. Sadly, I can't for the life of me tell you how the online multiplayer is because I have been trying for several days now. I have never found a game. I have tried with a whole bunch of different titles in the package. I cannot find a game to join. I have tried hosting one, and I have waited and waited and waited and waited, and nobody has shown up. So I don't know if that's just a symptom of the fact that not a lot of people are playing this game, or if, well, frankly, the online play is broken. I don't know. I cannot tell you how it works. Your mileage may vary. The fact that it exists in all is pretty rad. And given the track record of Code Mystics, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that if you can find a game, it will probably work pretty well. I really hope that's the case. And local multiplayer is local multiplayer. You got another controller, or you want to have the other person use the keyboard and mouse, you can do that. Very nice. I like that. Given how clunky these menus are with a controller, it's really kind of a shame because this is the kind of thing you would probably want to play on your television. And you can totally navigate these menus with a controller. It is just frustrating as all hell, and I really wish they'd done a better job with that. So, okay. So let's show off a little bit about what I mean here with the graphics. So the majority of the games in here in this collection, also I just want to point out this cabinet art, really nicely done. I really, really appreciate how they did that. And you can, of course, rotate it your own way. I don't think you can zoom in on it. No, that's kind of a bummer. But this is a really nice representation of the cabinets. This side art could be a little less blurry, I suppose, but it's nice that it's here at all. They could have just made a list. There is also, I didn't point this out either, there are galleries, which is just some miscellaneous artwork. You know, there's the marquee art, a lot of promotional flyers, arcade manuals, sell sheets, posters, you know, I think that's the cover. Yeah, Operation Maintenance and Service Manual. Like, this is nice. The problem is, it's clear these were all scanned. These were all either taken off the web or found in some drawer somewhere, and they were all scanned in. And they vary in quality, needless to say. You can zoom in on them. They get a little blurry when you do, but by and large, it holds up pretty well. But yeah, this stuff is all varying quality. There's no consistency to it, which is too bad, but some of this stuff is really old too, and like I said, Atari is a company that has been through hell and gone. Finding some of this stuff alone was probably pretty difficult, so I'm not going to fault them too much for that. They could have left it out. They put this effort in. I'll give them credit for that. Yeah, see, Major Havoc here doesn't even have very much. So, alright, so let's go to, what do we got here? Where's one that I know pretty well? Tempest. Okay, this is a good example of vector art. So we're going to play here on the, whoops, hang on. We're going to play on the standard vector display, okay? So let's bring this up here. So this is what it looks like. So you can see there's a little bit of a glow around the letters and the elements, just a tiny bit. But it's nothing too jarring. This is standard. This is the way they think people should play by default, and truth be told, I think it's good. It takes some of the the distracting nature of the glow out of it, and makes it, you still get a little bit of an idea of what vector art is about, but it makes it a little bit more accessible for people on modern systems. Also, the refresh rate on here is much better than it would be on a traditional vector monitor. Vector monitors tended to have a lot of afterglow, so like when an image moved on, you could sort of see a little bit of its representation from behind, right? So, alright, let's quickly show you each of these. Unfortunately, if you want to change it, you do have to back out to the menu. You can't do it while you're in your game, which I'm not a big fan of that. But you can also, you know, you'll probably find what you want before it goes, oh no, it did resume! Well, shut my mouth. That's really, really cool. I thought, so it looks like if you back out of a game and don't switch to another game, it actually saves your session. That's really nice. Extra props for that. I hadn't actually done that in any of my testing of the game, and I thought every time you backed out to the menu, you just lost whatever you were on, but it looks like it saves it, I presume, until you switch games. So that's very good. Good on you guys. So anyway, that's no glow. So that is probably the closest to modern graphics that would look. They're taking it and applying a modern visual filter to it. Realistic, this is much more representational of what vector graphics would have actually looked like back in the day. So you see there in particular on some of these elements that are further on. Let's see here if I can show you. So you see that distant object there? You see how the stuff in the distance has a much more prominent hue to it? Almost like it's its own light source, like it has kind of like a light bulb inside of it or something. Yeah, that's really the effect that vector monitors had. And some people like it, some people don't. Personally, I like it, probably just because I'm nostalgic for the days of these things in the actual arcades. Some vector monitors were much brighter or blurrier than others, especially as they got older and started to wear out a little bit. And then if you want to go super hardcore about it, you can go to bold. This just turns it up to 11. Yeah. Really? If you were playing on an arcade cabinet that looked like this, it was malfunctioning. Needless to say. But you did run into this a fair bit, and it's interesting historically to put this in because vector monitors are literally not manufactured anymore. It's actually, oh, that was the enemy. Vector monitors are literally not manufactured anymore, and if you see an arcade cabinet, shoot, I screwed that up. If you see an arcade cabinet with one, it's basically running on a historical artifact because it's impossible to get these now. So it's interesting that you can see sort of the different stages, I guess, in which those things could look. So I'll give them credit for that. It's a minor visual filter from a development perspective. Probably didn't take that much effort, but they didn't have to do it, and they did it. So good on you guys. So yeah, so you get the sort of general idea here of the presentational elements of it. It doesn't have all the features in the world, but it has all the features you need. So yeah, now here's where the problem comes in. Many of these games, especially in the arcade, as I said, were based around either very, very significant analog control, I guess is the way to put it. So they were based around using either a trackball or a spinner or paddle controls on the paddle controls were more for the 2600 and the home consoles, but really that's kind of what that was. These do not translate well to gamepads, and to be honest, I don't really know what you could do about that, because the fact is a modern day gamepad or a keyboard and mouse is just not up to the job, right? It's just not really made to emulate that kind of thing. So if you're going to do that, you have to make some compromises. Now, one can say, well, why did they put games in that require that? And yeah, that's a valid argument. At the same time, a lot of these games are classics. Like, I'm playing freaking Asteroids right here, okay? You can't have a package talking about the history of Atari and leave out Asteroids. That's just criminal, man. You just, like, come on, you got to do that. But the way this is mapped to my Xbox One controller is I am playing actually with the D-pad, funny enough. Even though this is a game that relies very heavily on analog controls, I am actually using the directional digital portion of my controller to do this. And truth be told, it probably works better this way, but it's also very imprecise. Like, if I just tap the controller, it's moving a little bit too much. You actually had, with the original arcade controls, you had real precision over this stuff, and here you just don't. It's going to make higher levels very, very hard to deal with, because you're gonna have to, there's a lot of nuance required in your movement, a lot of subtlety. In some of the later levels of games like Asteroids or something like Missile Command, which I'll also show you guys here, you have to move very, very slowly and very subtly in order to have the effect that you want, and that's just really not what you can do here. It doesn't afford itself to that. I also like we have the original art there. See the 1 and 2 player start buttons? That's how it actually looked on the cabinet, and I think it's really cool that they have that there. I always thought that was a neat thing. So this one's, well, okay, Missile Command's probably not that bad. Now this is actually controlling with the analog stick. So what's interesting is that they did remap the controls to, I'm playing Missile Command horribly in case you can't tell here. So they actually remapped the controls to the analog stick where appropriate, so where they think it would work. You want my honest opinion? I think it would have been nice if every game had support for both and people can sort of choose what they want. You know, if you want to play Missile Command with the analog stick, great. If you actually can play Missile Command better with a D-pad, I don't know why they didn't give you the choice. You know, I'm always about give people more choices, especially if it doesn't cost you nothing, right? If the ability to give them the choice is right there on the controller and doesn't hurt anything, I think that would have been a better way to go about it. I kind of wish they did that, but nonetheless, it works okay. Let's pick another one here. Let's pick... yeah, Crystal Castles. Here's a good one. Now, this is decidedly not a vector game. But you can see here, you see how my character is kind of... You see how he's kind of like... I'm using the analog stick again, and you see how he's kind of like... twitching around the corners and sort of having difficulty navigating? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The controls just, with certain titles in particular, they just don't feel properly responsive. There we go. Yeah, it just feels like in some cases it's fighting you a little bit, and like it doesn't really know what you... Oh, bugger. Like, it doesn't really know what you want, and it's trying to extrapolate it based on the movements you're giving it, but it's just not the level of precision the arcade games had. And if you're either a huge fan of these games or a purist, I guess, quote unquote, like I am, or just someone who remembers these games fondly from the past and really wants to be able to play them the way you remember them, yeah, this is probably not gonna feel right to you, and it's probably gonna frustrate you. Again, I don't know how you go about fixing that with the control options that you have available when you're putting one of these collections out on the PC, but yeah, I don't know. It feels to me like it's something they could have done more with. The analog precision in particular, it's just not there. And for really high-level play of a lot of titles like, even something like Pong, for example. High-level play of that requires precision. High-level play of Asteroids requires precision. High-level play of something like this requires precision. And you just don't get it. And yeah, that's a bummer. That really is a bummer. So I've given you a quick look here at some of the arcade titles. You're sort of getting the idea. Like, here's one. I actually haven't tried this yet, but this is either Sprint or Sprint 2. I can't remember which, but this is going to be... I ain't even know how you accelerate in this thing. Wait, is it left trigger? Oh, it's okay. It's left trigger and right trigger, but you accelerate really slowly. Sorry, I actually meant to press reset there. So yeah, you can see here, now this was a game that actually played with a wheel, right? You could see it there on the cabinet art, and this is just, this is not precise at all. I mean, the arcade game was not precise either. You know, the wheel had a ridiculous dead zone on it, and I mean, it was designed to get money out of you, right? But yeah, this just doesn't feel precise at all. And I'm sure you play it long enough, you could adjust and get used to it and learn to play well, I'm sure. But yeah, nonetheless, it's just not, it's not the ideal way to go about it, I guess. So I've given you a little bit of an interesting, no, I don't want to quit the game, thank you. See, again, trying to get over there, so here we are. Yeah, this is where things really fall down for me. The arcade selection is not that bad, though it's all older Atari titles. You know, a lot of the newer Atari titles that I really like are not there, though some of them, a lot of those titles did come in the era where Atari had actually been acquired by Midway, or Williams, I guess, and they were still called Atari games, but they weren't technically part of Atari. So to be fair, I guess there would be licensing stuff involved with those games, but yeah, it's just not the greatest selection of titles here. Like, there's games in here that I absolutely remember, but it's just not, like, a lot of these are really, really old 2600 games, and they're just not the interesting ones that people remember. So this is Street Racer. As you can see here, you can actually select... Street Racer was kind of like combat with cars, so you can actually select your TV type, because a lot of these games actually supported black and white televisions. So you can select that, you can select your penalty, your game type, all sorts of other things like that. And you can set the number of players, obviously. So, again, this is a game that was really designed for paddles. So you can use the analog stick to control it, but it's really not... it's really not precise at all, because you sort of have to hold the analog stick sort of halfway out in order to get to get the position you're looking for, and it's just it just feels mushy, you know, and it doesn't feel super responsive. Super Breakout's another one here. This should be, yeah, like this. Oh, dude, like, this is unplayable. Like, I'm trying to play this with I'm trying to play this with the analog stick on my Xbox One controller. This is so touchy, you have no idea. I am moving the stick in tiny, tiny little increments, and it is so sensitive, and you can see sometimes it's like leaping halfway across the screen. I'm not even, like, I'm not doing anything to that effect. It's just sometimes, oh god, yeah, this is awful. Sometimes it just, like, if you move the stick too far too quickly, it, like, leaps across the screen, but sometimes it just does that even when you don't want it to, and it really doesn't. Ugh. Yeah, like, this is almost unplayable like this. And here's the flip side of that problem. Now I'm using the mouse. Well, there's two big problems here, which is that, number one, the mouse is not terribly responsive. Like, I am yanking the mouse to the far edges of my fairly wide gaming surface here that it's on, and oh man, like, the mouse is the polar opposite. The analog stick is way too sensitive, and the mouse is way too sluggish. Like, this needs to be way more sensitive than it is. Also, if you're running on a multi-monitor setup like I am, this game does not lock your mouse cursor to the window. So if you're playing a game that requires a button press, which Breakout doesn't, but other games do, yeah, if you click that button, the game might swap out because it thinks you want to go to your second monitor. Yeah, not cool. A lot of people out there run multiple monitors, guys. If you're going to run the game in full screen, lock the bloody cursor. Why is that so difficult? I don't know. That's something they could patch, and I hope they do. So, the analog control in the arcade is actually, in the arcade games, is not horrible, but it's not great either. Here, it's just kind of bad, which is a real shame. So here's another one here. Here's Video Pinball. So again, there's some options you can set. Video Pinball was an old-ass pinball game. I'm trying to actually figure out... Okay, so the left on the... Okay. So it's just the left and right D-pads to do that, and then how do you launch? Okay, down. Now, there we go. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, the emulation on these things is spot on. I played a lot of these games when I was a kid, and Code Mystics did what Code Mystics does, which is they made really, really good quality emulation. These packages are, these packages that they have, they're very well put together. The frame rate is as I remember it. The sound is as I remember it. You know, the colors pop. They look good on a modern display. The bezel art for most of these games, I think, actually fits really well. Like, some of these collections, the bezel art is actually pretty crappy looking. I think they did stuff here that actually fits the theme of each game very, very well, and looks good. I will give them credit for that. I think they did a nice job. I just think the controls, at least the controls where analog is involved, is just not very good quality. I think I'm not a game developer. I don't know how they could have done better, but they should have. They really should have. So this is Yars Revenge. This is a game I did a video on a very long time ago. It's actually one of my favorite 2600 games, and I am glad this game is on here because I love it. And it... The original video of this I did, I've been meaning to redo it because it actually recorded terribly and it was way too dark and it actually didn't look good. This looks a lot better. I don't actually know how all this rapid screen flickering is coming through on the video because it might be coming through because I'm recording at 60 frames. It might not be. A lot of Atari games had a lot of very, very heavy flickering in them. So, yeah, Yars Revenge is a game that really made no friggin' sense, but I still really enjoyed it. Word up, Howard Scott Warshaw. So that's well done, and there are some old school classics that maybe don't hold up very well, you know, like here's Adventure. Like, Adventure was you were a dot going through a castle, all right? And yeah, I get it. Adventure, not exactly the world's most state-of-the-art game anymore, but this blew a lot of people's minds at the time. And yeah, you eat that. And it's cool that it's here. You know, this is a game, if you want to talk video gaming history, this was a big deal at the time. And I'm glad that it's here. What can I say? This is not a game that holds up well by any stretch of the imagination these days. And I'm screwed. But it's neat that it's here. The problem is that's what a lot of these games are like. And a lot of these Atari games, just some of them are good, some of them just don't. Some of the, like, most of these are the very early 2600 games and not the ones that some people may think of when they think of Atari. But most people like me who did grow up with the system, when we think of amazing games on the 2600, we think of, you know, I think of Activision stuff, honestly. I think of Enduro. I think of Crooks and Capers. I think of Pitfall. I think of other games like that. And you don't get any of that with this. You know, you've got your Breakout, and some of these games, by the way, do repeat between the Atari 2600 and arcade. You're going to see a lot of repeats in here. And frankly, the 2600 versions of almost all of those games were notably worse. Like Crystal Castles on the 2600, like, dude. Yeah, needless to say, this is not Crystal Castles in the arcade. So almost every one of the games in here that is duplicated between arcade and the 2600, you're going to want to play the arcade version. And that's kind of a bummer because I do find it disingenuous when they say, hey, this thing has over 100 games and a whole bunch of them are duplicates of the same games, with one version being the objectively inferior one. That's a little skeezy if you ask me. Yeah, I don't know. And also, yeah, the 2600 games, none of those have online leaderboards. Only the arcade versions do, which I'm not really sure why that is, but they do have online multiplayer, though. Again, ain't nobody playing it. So let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, we've got stuff like Fatal Run. Also, the one thing I will give them as well, the Atari 2600 games do have full scans of the manuals as opposed to just random art, which I like. And, you know, the manuals had a whole bunch of stuff about, you know, how to actually set up the console and hook it to your TV. You friggin' whippersnappers with your HDMI and your DisplayPort and your whatever. See that thing? RF modulator, bitches. You have no idea the crap we went through to play video games on our TV back in the 80s. You friggin' kids, get the hell off my lawn. Ugh. So, yeah, so you see we've got a bunch of stuff here. Let's see, like here's, for example, the 2600 version of Missile Command. Again, like, you got some more options, but dude. Now, Missile Command on the 2600 was actually not all that bad as conversions go, but compared to the arcade, if you have access to both, why would you play it this way? Like, you wouldn't. Like, I don't see why you'd want to, unless you have a particular fondness for this growing up and want to relive that memory. Yeah, I don't know why you'd want to do that. So there we are. Yeah, here's Night Driver. Now this might cause, if any of you are prone to seizures, you might not want to watch this because this whole game is friggin' one big strobe. But like Night Driver was really, really cool at the time. This is a game where you basically have to drive as far as you can in a time limit and avoiding obstacles. But because of the limitations of the Atari hardware at the time, because this was a very, very early game, developed by people who didn't really yet understand the hardware they were working with, it is very, very limited in terms of production values, and it has this horrible eye-burning flicker to it. I actually like Night Driver, but it doesn't hold a candle to something like Enduro, and when you look at Enduro versus this, I mean, the comparison, there really is none. It's just, this is so much, the later games, especially the third-party games that came out on the 2600, were so much more impressive than the stuff that they made in-house. It's just really no question about that. And a lot of this stuff is like that, so really, if you look at this and you're just like, achievement unlocked Wanderer. I guess that's maybe play a bunch of similar games. And also, some of these games were designed to be played with only 2 people. So, I don't even know how the hell do you turn in this thing? I don't even know. For reals, guys, I'm trying to turn and I just can't. So I don't even know how this game works. So some of these early 2600 games as well were only 2-player. They didn't actually have AI or anything like that. So some of these games you can't even play on your own. Now, this game was actually okay. This game was like a low-rent Atari version of Afterburner. But you see here, like, compare this to Night Driver or some of the other games that we looked at on the 2600. This was a later game in the Atari 2600 life cycle. Because the thing with the 2600, right, is Atari hired a lot of software engineers fresh out of school and basically went, here's the manual, here's an assembler compiler, make games. Most of them had never made games before, and a lot of them hadn't even programmed that much. So a lot of them were trying to learn this system as they went, and they really didn't know what they were doing, which is why a lot of early Atari games looked so incredibly primitive. But as time went on, and they actually got to learn the system better and understand a lot more about how to do stuff with it, you got games like the third-party stuff and even like this, which looked way more interesting and had way more impressive production values to them because these guys actually knew how to do some cool stuff. And you get a few of those in here, but the majority of what you get from the 2600 is the very early era stuff, which is that, it really is that basic. It's that simplistic. And that's going to turn off some people. You know, if you're really into this historical stuff, if you grew up with a 2600 and want to play some of these to sort of relive the memories of your childhood, totally understand that, and this collection would probably be for you. If you're someone who wants to learn about the 2600 and learn about some of its historical stuff, you'll see that, but these games, by and large, do not hold up. And even as someone who grew up with them, I can totally understand why everybody would say, oh my god, why would I ever want to play this? The history alone doesn't necessarily make these a compelling game. Oh god. Well, I got myself screwed there. And so I think it's a bit of a tough sell in that regard. You're going to have to determine if that really works for you. From the perspective of the collection itself, I think it's actually pretty well done. I think what am I doing here? I can't, again. Oh, wait. I've never actually played Secret Quest, so okay, I guess it wanted some, So again, like, look at this even compared to some of the stuff we had before, right? Like, it looks... This just looks so much more impressive than some of the other titles, and that's what I mean about the 2600. It was an exciting time because as the 2600's life cycle evolved, it got incredible. Like, you got to really see the platform evolve, and you got to see the crazy amount of advancement and innovation that came on that system, and that was a great time to play video games and see that stuff. But if you weren't around for that and don't have that historical reference point, you might look at this and just go, oh my god, this looks like crap. And if that's the case, this collection's not going to sell you on it, especially for 20 bucks. I think Code Mystics did a very good job. I think the presentation is good. I think that while the options are limited, they did get in all the options that count. I think taking the time to put in online play is damn cool. That is something you don't see in a lot of these collections, and it's a shame that nobody's playing it, but nonetheless, they took the time, and it's there. I really don't like the menu design. I think navigating these menus with a controller is horribly clunky and unintuitive. And if you're going to want to play this game locally with people, you're going to want to play it on a couch, and it's going to be extra frustrating for that reason. And that's a bummer. I really wish they'd done something a little bit better with that. But yeah, you have all the options here. If you're playing the 2600 games, you have a ton of great, oh god, Star Raiders. I still never understood this game. This game also had like a separate little keypad peripheral that came with it too, which you don't get here, which is going to make this even weirder to play. I don't even know. Does this actually explain? Well, it kind of does. So at least you can look at this, and I should say also you can rebind the controls. Again, another thing a lot of collections don't let you do. Very cool that these guys did that. They put in the work. Code Mystics put in the work, and this is where Code Mystics excels. They are extremely good at this kind of thing. If some of their other packages are anything to go by, and I'm impressed. You know, the modern day Atari is basically a shell company that most people see as just milking their properties for cheap cash-ins. And frankly, a lot of the stuff that the modern Atari has been putting out has been pretty garbage lately. A lot of the original stuff they put out has been real crap. But they actually went to Code Mystics for this project, and Code Mystics, you know, they take their jobs very seriously, and they're extremely good at it. And they decided, no, we're gonna put in the work, and we're gonna do this well. And I will absolutely give them credit for that. Whether or not you think this is worth a $20 price tag, like I said, it's going to depend on what you think of the game lineup here and how much that means to you. For me, again, even as somebody who... Oh god, this game. I forgot about this. This is basically like a text-based adventure game where you were commanding a starship. And, oh geez, yeah, I'm not even going to try that one. For me personally, even as someone who grew up with this is not the set of Atari games that I really wanted. I really wanted the third-party stuff, and you'll never see that in a collection like this, at least not that Atari themselves puts out. And that's too bad. I do think the arcade games stand out much more than the 2600 games. I think they're much more impressive, and they're the better looking games, and they're the better playing games, frankly. But the majority of this package is the 2600 stuff. It's not the arcade stuff. And if the arcade stuff's really what you come here for, the value proposition is even lower. So that's something to keep in mind. So you're gonna have to decide that for yourself. But as a collection, and in terms of how it emulates the games, and in terms of how it does respect to the games that are in it, it's top shelf. It really is. Code Mystics is good at what they do, and I hope they get to stick around and keep making more of these, because they are pretty much, them and M2 in Japan are pretty much their respective creams of the crop. They are very good at what they do. They obviously have a deep respect and love for what they do, and that's really cool. But, you know, they could only work with what they were given, and what they were given in this case maybe wasn't the cream of the crop. But I've showed this off to you here. You can see a full list of games. If you didn't get to catch it earlier in the video, you can see a full list of the games included in this package on the Steam page for this game. So you have a lot of options there for that. And hopefully I've given you a good breakdown of the package. So this has been another long video, as these package review videos always are. But I do really like to go into a deep dive on the package, because when you're considering buying one of these, the wrapper that comes around the games is as important as the games themselves, in my opinion. And it's really something critical to go over that stuff at length, and done that here. So I hope you guys found it interesting. So yeah, that is Atari Vault, developed by Code Mystics and published by, God, it's got to be 3rd or 4th generation Atari, in 2016 on the PC on Steam. You can also get this from, I believe you can get this from Green Man Gaming. I'm not 100% sure of that, but if you do want this collection and you do want to buy it through Green Man Gaming, please consider doing so through the referral link in the description below the video. If you do that, a tiny little piece of your purchase will go to help support my channel, which I would appreciate very much. And yeah, if you liked what you saw here, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. As always, that does help me out a great deal. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Take it easy, everybody.